I have 4 kids, so my family spends a lot of money on childcare. I think on average we spend about $65,000 a year on childcare, and that's a combination of daycare, after-school care, and summer camp. So I have 2 school-age kids, so they are in public school, and 2 kids in daycare. And so I am not a stranger to the high cost of childcare. But last night, a woman messaged me, and her message really had me thinking. All right, this is her message. It says, I just stumbled upon my total spend on childcare in my budgeting software. I have spent $183,000 between nanny share, home-based daycare, preschool, after-school care, and camps. I have 2 kids who are 8 and 5 and live in a high cost of living area. I stayed home with my kids for about a year and a half in the pandemic, so if that hadn't happened, I would have spent closer to $250,000. I know the topic of childcare costs come up a lot, so I thought I'd share some real-world data. So obviously, after reading this, I decided I had to do the math for my own family and just figure out what our total spend is going to look like per child for childcare. And I did it from ages 0 to 10. And the reason I do it till 10 is because despite the fact that most kids go to kindergarten at age 5, childcare costs don't disappear. Obviously, they go down. They're not the same as daycare, but you've got after school care and summer camp. So we spend on average $20,000 a year for daycare. So that's $20,000 a year over 5 years. One of my kids does miss the cutoff, so we're going to have 6 years for her, but let's just say $100,000 on daycare for one child. Now for after school care, we're spending about $1,000 a month for after school care and about $3,000 per summer for summer camp. And so that is $13,000 a year. And that brings us to our grand total of about $165,000 in childcare costs for one child.
Wait a damn minute. Wait a damn.
They're spending $65,000 per year on child care for 2 smaller kids and 2 school-age children. For each child, that's going to be a total of $165,000 just on child care alone. And that's not even the worst case scenario. The one woman that wrote in said they already shelled out $183,000 for 2 kids. And if she had stayed home for 18 months during the pandemic, her total would have hit $250,000. And then people wonder why birth rates are declining or why single-family households don't make any financial sense at all. Redfin just released a report showing that in many major U.S. metros, childcare now costs more than rent. Here's the article, the title, Sending 2 Kids to Daycare Costs More Than Rent in Major U.S. Metros. They wrote in Denver and Seattle, families pay nearly as much for daycare as they do for rent. And they pay much more for daycare than rent if it's for 2 children. The average monthly cost of sending 1 child to daycare in Denver is $1,434, equal to 83% of the typical rent payment, $1,720 in that metro area. Sending 2 kids to daycare in Denver costs $2,867, or 167% of the typical rent payment. In Seattle, the average cost of sending 1 child to daycare is $1,660, equal to 80% of that metro area's rent payment, which is $2,065. For 2 kids, that's $2,320 for childcare, or 160% of rent. This is absolutely crazy. After Denver and Seattle in the top 5, there's Minneapolis, San Francisco, and Baltimore. I mean, look at Baltimore. Median rent is over $1,600, while daycare for just 1 child averages $1,147. Have 2 kids, you're paying more for childcare than you are for housing. Yeah, in many metro areas, families are spending nearly as much or more on childcare as they are on rent. And that's because in places where housing is expensive, so is childcare. It's nearly impossible for the average family to keep up. Rent is decreasing, but it's still near record highs. And home ownership, although prices are going down in some areas, it's still way too high, out of reach, making childcare a second rent payment or mortgage, one you can't avoid. And you still have to pay for food, utilities, gas, insurance, healthcare, and basic essentials. The report is clear. America doesn't just have a housing affordability crisis, it has a childcare affordability crisis too. The combined costs of housing and childcare are eating up such a massive portion of household income that budgets are stretched thin and families are being pushed to the brink. This is one big reason why more women are staying home, because it literally costs more to work and pay for daycare than to stay home. So now the man is stuck trying to shoulder all the household expenses, which are way higher than 50 years ago. Mortgage or rent, groceries, insurance, healthcare, transportation, everything. And we wonder why people are burned out, opting out, or choosing not to have kids at all. And let's be real, single-family households just don't make any financial sense. They never truly did. But now it's undeniably unsustainable. No question about it. Millennials and Gen Z are being priced out of parenting.
Right now, parents across the U.S. are struggling with childcare costs and have been for some time. But there's a new report from the nonprofit Child Care and Aware of America shows the average cost of placing two kids at a child care center at least 25% higher than the typical rent in every state. I mean, think about that. Laura Tolchin joins us. Laura's Chief Strategy Officer at Imagine Early Learning. As I said, think about that. But think about, Laura, that's crazy, isn't it?
It is crazy. Thank you so much for having me, Connell, and thank you for spending a few minutes on this very, very important issue. Yeah, families are being priced out of having children in this country, and it is crazy. We know that there's so much focus on inflation and inflation as an election issue. But if we can refocus a little bit and think about what is really hurting America's families' pockets, we land on childcare.
Big time. Now, let me play, we've done some reporting at News Nation on this, an interview, short clip that we did with a mother and someone who works in one of these childcare centers talking about the numbers, and then we'll put them on the screen afterwards. But listen to this.
Sure.
It's $1,500 alone a month just for him. I can't pay that. That's more than half of my check.
We haven't been able to raise our childcare rates.
That's a good point, too, that's not being discussed. The costs to operate these childcare centers are also rising, labor being a large part of the budget. But you had this mother here who said the cost is $1,500 per month for that one baby, which will be over half her income. Now, you already know she's probably on some type of assistance. That's how she's getting by, along with others below poverty level or low-income households. The government is helping them. They're getting subsidies. And the ones not living off the government are living off their parents, which is also despicable. I'm sorry, if you can't afford to take care of yourself in this economy, why would you make the smart decision to get pregnant and have children and you can't take care of them either? Yeah, it's a problem if you need everybody else to help pay for your kids. Everybody got to help buy your food, your baby formula, diapers, daycare. If everybody else got to provide for your child, that means you can't afford to have the child in the first place. That's the truth. And if you can't afford a home or your apartment, why do you think you can afford a child? I have to say most Gen Z and millennials are accounting for all this and electing not to have kids right now, but you still have a bunch of fools making babies left and right, men and women, that they can't afford. And as soon as child support comes for them, or as soon as they can't pay their rent and the eviction notice is at the door, they come whining and crying on the internet. No, you made your bed, you gotta lay in it. These are all your own decisions, and whatever decisions you make, you have to live with them. You're the one choosing a life of struggle. If all the data is out there, you refuse to acknowledge it. This is not the time to be having children out of wedlock. And even if you have a wife and husband together, if y'all too broke to provide for the two of you, adding number 3, 4, and 5 to the family won't make it easier. You're just adding extra costs for food, health care, child care bills that you can't afford, putting more strain on your relationship that will ultimately fail because finances is the #1 cause of divorce. So yeah, it's up to you.
And we have parents that are leaving because of the cost of living.
Yeah, more than half my check, she said at first, the mom. Now, I'll put up these numbers, as you know about these, Laura, the average weekly cost for a nanny. Look at that, $766, that's up 4%. Daycare, $300, up 13%. Family care center is up. Babysitting costs, $192, up 7%. So, you know, everything's up and people have to make tough decisions now.
Exactly. And I mean, just in the past 8 years alone, we've seen the cost of raising a child in this country increase by 19%. On average, families are spending about 25% of all of their income on childcare. That is way, way, way above the 7%, which is deemed affordable.
Yeah, it's definitely a crisis. I mean, look at the top metros in the country. Atlanta, the average child care cost for just one child is $739, when the median asking rent is $1,535. Chicago, the average for one child is $1,037. The median asking rent, $1,750. Dallas, Texas, average child care for one child, $851. Median asking rent, $1,455. Houston, Texas, child care for one child, $735. median asking rent $1,249. LA, absolutely ridiculous. $1,145 for one child, median asking rent $2,747. Miami, $764 for one child, median asking rent $2,415. New York, $1,208 for one child, median asking rent $2,843. Philadelphia, $961 for one child, median asking rent $1,885. St. Louis, $899 for one child, $1,275 median asking rent. Tampa, Florida, $865 for one child, median asking rent $1,793. And look at DC, this is horrible. DC, $1,401 for one child, median asking rent $2,061. So as you can see, if you have more than one child, you're definitely paying more for childcare than your rent. Bottom line, there's a reason why birth rates are so low. Although you still have a bunch of irresponsible people popping out babies left and right that they obviously can't afford, leading to more kids growing up without both parents in the same household, you still have a lot of responsible Gen Z and millennials making the conscious decision not to make life harder on themselves than it already is. Let's go ahead and get the conversation started. Tell me what you think about this below. Shout out to Rob P and Dark Power. I appreciate you all for your support for the channel. You can show your support as well. The link to PayPal is below. Ladies, fellas, want a balanced analysis, want the truth from a woman's perspective? Then you're going to want to subscribe to this channel and don't forget to like and share.